Go. Go now. Join your father before I do something I regret.
Season 3 of Yellowjackets leaves the Sadecki family in shambles after a 2-month psychological break in Shauna, the family matriarch. This was triggered by a blackmail scheme gone awry, which was executed by her husband Jeff, with the best of intentions at heart, of course. Jeff's business, Sadecki Furniture, had been struggling financially, which led to Jeff making a bad deal with a loan shark. When he couldn't pay back the loan, he decided the best course of action would be to blackmail one of the Yellowjackets survivors with secret knowledge of their experiences in the wilderness, in hopes that one of them might have the money. Unfortunately, his wife caught on to his schemes, but not before she had killed her lover, thinking that he was the blackmailer. This kicks off a series of unfortunate events that culminates in the very likely dissolution of the Sadecki family. Over the course of about 2 months, Shauna went from a normal wife and mother to an unpredictable murderer, dragging everyone in her life into her downward spiral. And yes, while it was Jeff who kind of started the whole thing, Shauna has embraced the darkness within herself and seems to be rushing headlong toward disaster, while their daughter stands by watching and wondering whether her mother has lost her mind or if she ever really cared to begin with.
I can't explain it. It's just like feeling.
In this video, we will explore the Sadecki family and what has driven them to this point. But before we get into it, if you love Yellowjackets as much as I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Now, let's get into it. Shauna and Jeff's relationship goes way back prior to the plane crash. Jeff was dating Jackie, Shauna's best friend, but Jeff and Shauna were sleeping together on the side. The origins of Shauna and Jeff's relationship are haunted by the memory of Jackie, even after 25 years. Their relationship was built upon secrets and lies, and mutual shame kept them together as repentance for their original sin. The dynamics between them started with this affair. Shauna was clearly the dominant party in the relationship, while Jeff was just having fun and thinking with the wrong head. Unbeknownst to Shauna, Jeff lost his virginity to her, while Jackie, who had been dating Jeff since freshman year, still hadn't slept with him. After the plane crash, Shauna realized that she was pregnant and kept it secret for as long as she could. Eventually, Jackie confronted her about her strange behavior, and Shauna confessed, but claimed the baby was fathered by their friend Randy. Jackie finally learned the truth of the father's identity when she read Shauna's diary, though I've always believed that Jackie would have forgiven Shauna eventually if things hadn't worked out the way they did. When Jackie finally outed Shauna in front of everyone for sleeping with her boyfriend, things didn't exactly work out as she had imagined, and she ended up outside in the cold. Unfortunately, it was the night the first snows of winter fell, and Jackie died out there, frozen in her sleep. In Season 3, another layer of their relationship is exposed when Travis tells Shauna that he hears Jackie's thoughts and her memories of their sleepover makeouts, jealousy, and betrayal. So this definitely adds an element of romance and jealousy to Jackie's relationship to both Shauna and Jeff, and by extension, Shauna's own relationship with Jeff. Shauna has taken on a more masculine role throughout Season 3 as she ascended in power out in the wilderness. She has become far more aggressive and domineering over the entire group, including the adults who walked into their camp. Jeff, on the other hand, has embraced his feminine and subservient side in contrast to Shauna's truculent leadership in the adult timeline. Shauna basically shuts his life down with her authoritative attitude, ruining business deals, forcing him to abandon his business while they're locked up in a hotel and Callie's missing more school, and disrespecting him when he asks her about it. The Sadeckis operate within a narcissistic family structure, characterized by a parent exhibiting narcissistic traits, which significantly impacts the family dynamics and well-being of its members. This can lead to emotional manipulation, lack of empathy, and a focus on the narcissistic parent's needs over the other family members. Shauna has PTSD, which causes her to exhibit unpredictable behavior, which trickles down to affect other members of her family. She lies and keeps secrets from Jeff and Callie, but when she finally opens up, she overshares with Callie and makes her into an accomplice to the Adam situation. So she has learned to weaponize her PTSD as a way of appearing weak. She is strategically submissive to Jeff, but also goes over his head and authority regularly, believing she is far more capable than he is. This was only validated after she figured out the blackmail scheme, though not before she had jumped to deadly and incorrect conclusions about her lover, Adam Martin. Jeff read Shauna's journals at some point, so he knows some of the things that happened out in the wilderness. However, it's unclear if he learned about the baby from the journals or from Shauna opening up and telling him at some point. If he learned from the journals, it gives an even deeper meaning to his statement that it's very lonely being married to Shauna. He probably waited for a long time for her to open up about that, but perhaps it never happened. This seems to be a pattern with Shauna and Jeff. He always gives her the benefit of the doubt and offers her patience and time, but she rarely is willing to meet him halfway.
I'm with your mom. It's lonely.
As an adult, Shauna's memories of the wilderness are unclear, but she contributes that to the fact that they were having so much fun out there. This shows us many things. Most importantly, that Shauna is an unreliable narrator. She openly admits her memories are foggy. Shauna is one of the focal characters in the teen timeline, and because we see so much of her own personal experience, we might even interpret much of the teen timeline as being told from Shauna's perspective. However, with Shauna being an unreliable narrator, we should also understand that her memories are dangerously inaccurate. Shauna may have been suffering from postpartum psychosis during her time in the wilderness after the birth of the baby. This could be the cause of her extreme mood swings, her irrationality, paranoia, hallucinations, and violent outbursts. This is by no means any fault of her own, but should be pointed out as a contributing factor to her primal nature, which came out in the wilderness, and the idea, in her mind, of being elevated to the position of Antler Queen. As we can see in the adult timeline, she identifies with that version of herself, a version that she had cast aside to assume the role of wife and mother once she was rescued from the wilderness.
You don't get to have a normal life.
Now, you know I couldn't do a deep dive on Yellowjackets without the mention of the Greek elements to the story, and the framing of the downfall of the Sadecki family is no different. Throughout Season 3, I have mentioned the oresteia being used by the writers as framework or reference for the development of the wilderness justice system, but I believe there's another layer to this as well. The oresteia is a trilogy of Greek tragedies written by Aeschylus in the 5th century BCE concerning the murder of King Agamemnon by his wife Clytemnestra, the murder of Clytemnestra by their son Orestes, the trial of Orestes, the end of the curse on the house of Atreus, and the pacification of the Furies, also called the Erinyes or the Eumenides. It takes place immediately following the war in Troy and the events of the Iliad. The principal themes of the trilogy include the contrast between revenge and justice, as well as the transition from personal vendetta to organized litigation. Season 3 explored these ideas through Coach Ben's trial, where we can see the wilderness justice system operated under the primitive motifs of vengeance and vendetta. The judicial system designed by the girls was as faithful to a court of law back in the real world as far as they could recall. However, when it came time to vote, Shauna imposed her will by intimidation in a miscarriage of justice, and Coach Ben was found guilty by the jury of 12 angry girls, but we all know that he was not guilty at all. The first of the 3 parts of the oresteia is called Agamemnon. It details the homecoming of Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, from the Trojan War. After 10 years of warfare and Troy fallen, all of Greece could lay claim to the victory. Waiting at home for Agamemnon is his wife, Queen Clytemnestra, who's been plotting his murder. She desires his death to avenge the sacrifice of her own daughter Iphigenia, to exterminate the only thing hindering her from taking the crown, and finally being able to publicly embrace her good-time lover Aegisthus. She kills Agamemnon in his bathtub, as well as his prize of war, Cassandra, the prophetess. The second part is titled The Libation Bearers. Many years after the murder of Agamemnon, his son Orestes returns to Argos with his cousin Pylades to exact vengeance on Clytemnestra as an order from Apollo for killing Agamemnon. Upon arriving, Orestes reunites with his sister Electra at Agamemnon's grave while she was there bringing libations to Agamemnon in an attempt to stop Clytemnestra's bad dreams. Shortly after the reunion, both Orestes and Electra, influenced by the chorus, come up with a plan to kill both Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. The third and final act of the oresteia is the Eumenides, which illustrates how the sequence of events of the trilogy ended up in the development of social order or a proper judicial system in Athenian society. In this play, Orestes is hunted and tormented by the Furies, a trio of goddesses known to be instruments of justice. They relentlessly pursue Orestes for the killing of his mother. Through the intervention of Apollo, Orestes is able to escape for a brief moment while they are asleep and escape to Athens under the protection of Hermes. Seeing the Furies sleep, Clytemnestra's ghost comes to wake them to obtain justice on her son Orestes for killing her. Orestes pleads to the goddess Athena for help. She responds by setting up a trial for him in Athens on the Areopagus. This trial is made up of a group of 12 Athenian citizens and is supervised by Athena. Here, Orestes is used as a trial dummy by Athena to set up the first courtroom trial. He is also the object of the Furies, Apollo, and Athena. After the trial comes to an end, the votes are tied. Athena casts the deciding vote and determines that Orestes will not be killed. This does not sit well with the Furies, but Athena eventually persuades them to accept the decision, instead of violently retaliating against wrongdoers, become a constructive force of vigilance in Athens. She then changes their names from the Furies to the Eumenides, which translates to the Gracious Ones. Athena then ultimately rules that all trials must henceforth be settled in court rather than being carried out personally. Back in season 2, Jeff had a very intense nightmare after seeing the photos of Adam Martin's dismembered corpse shown to him by the police as they searched the Sadecki household. In this dream, Jeff found Shauna in their kitchen with knives for hands when she was supposed to be away at Lottie's compound. She lovingly corners him and cuts his side open, telling him she loves him and this is what he likes, right? She then cut his throat. Just another body on the altar of the Antler Queen. Jeff wakes up to find Callie drinking a beer, and they have a heart-to-heart. Callie is afraid she's like her mother, and Jeff tells her about the baby who died in the wilderness. This is very upsetting for Callie, who had no idea. She realizes how messed up Shauna is on an even deeper level. What's interesting about Jeff's dream is that he's not the only character to have a dream or premonition of their own death. Lottie also had a vision of her death when she was baptized by Laura Lee, which we saw come full circle in the season 3 finale. So could this be a hint to viewers that Jeff's dream of Shauna Scissorhands is a dream of his own demise? We should also point out that Adam is a victim of wilderness justice. In Shauna's mind, she was protecting the group. She believed that he was stalking them and had taken their diaries. The blackmailer was sending images of the wilderness symbol, something that no outsider would be aware of. However, she weaponizes her PTSD when it comes to confessing what really happened. She plays weak and helpless, telling the other women that Adam had attacked her. By season 3, we realize that no one buys that story at this point, knowing how Shauna truly is. She acted on impulse and did not include the others. There was not even a fair trial according to their own societal structure. Shauna took justice into her own hands just to feel power again, just as she had done when she imposed her will upon weaker members of the group during Coach Ben's trial.
Anyone who finds him guilty, raise your fucking hand!
Callie struggles throughout the entire series because she loves her mother, but she also doesn't understand her at all. The series started with Callie being the distant teenager while Shauna desired to be closer to her, but the roles have reversed. The more Callie tries to get close to her mother, now Shauna pulls away to participate in very sinister behavior. The things Callie has seen about Shauna have not only confused and traumatized her, but also made her into an accomplice to her mother's crimes. Callie realizes there's so much more going on with the Yellowjackets than she or her father could ever understand, but unfortunately, she is inherently a facet to the wilderness equation. Lottie informed Callie that she was the child of the wilderness and possessed a culmination of all of their unique abilities. Callie was terrified by what Lottie had said, and she pushed her down the stairs to her death, which was luckily ruled a suicide. However, Citizen Detective African Gray was hot on the case and figured out that Lottie had been murdered by Callie. She recommended telling her father, which Callie did. Jeff knows that this is because he allowed everything with Shauna to go way too far. They both need to get out of there immediately before Shauna came back. So they packed up their stuff and they left. Shauna returned from her escapades of mutilating Melissa, believing Jeff and Callie would be waiting for her at the Jolly Hitcher. She then went to her home, only to find empty closets and the phones shut off. She went to Misty's, who told her to get lost or she would file a restraining order. Shauna sent Jeff about 100 text messages, and when he finally answered, he said he and Callie needed space, that they were safe, but to stop messaging them. He set a boundary. Shauna's reaction to that boundary was to get drunk and to do something somewhat productive. She started journaling. However, the thoughts that came out of her were just a byproduct of her own narcissism. She went on and on about her own grandiosity, which was given up in order to be a wife and mother. All the trauma the Yellowjackets had endured was just fun, and that's why they can't remember it. She remembers how powerful she was, that she was a warrior and a queen, and she wants to take that back. How this will manifest is a terrifying prospect, because we know what she did in order to claim this queenship back in the wilderness, so how much farther can she go in the real world before this all catches up to her? The Oresteia explores the transition from personal vendetta to organized litigation, which mirrors the differences in the wilderness justice system versus societal law and order or the real-world judicial system. Shauna operates by the laws of wilderness justice, which is a stark contrast to how things work in the real world. The things that happened with the Adam Martin case, which was a cornerstone of Season 2, were wrapped up a bit too easily and seem inevitable to come back around again. If Jeff's dream is a premonition of his own death, this would certainly send Callie into her own downward spiral. It's difficult to predict under which system of justice she would operate under. Would she take up the mantle of her mother and serve her a taste of her own medicine as vengeance? Or would she operate under the laws of modern society and allow the law to take matters into its own hands? These are questions explored in the Oresteia, along with the themes of justice through retaliation, justice through the law, revenge, mother right and father right, and matricide and femininity. So we can see these ideas falling in line with future seasons of Yellowjackets and the dynamics between Callie and Shauna. The duo have already faced lawfare together, and Callie remained loyal to her mother at that time. But if it were Jeff who had fallen victim to Shauna's uncontrollable rage, would Callie stand by her mother? It's also a notable parallel to the death of Natalie's father in a roundabout way, another layer pointing to Callie rising as their queen after Nat's death, rather than her mother muscling her way to it like she had done in the past. Interestingly, in the Yellowjackets Greek iceberg livestream I did a couple of years ago, I made a comparison between Callie and the Eumenides and how she seems to be modeled after their characteristics. So there have been crumbs for this idea throughout the series for those with eyes to see it. Callie is deeply concerned with epigenetic memory and inherited generational curses, though she may not realize it in its entirety. She senses that she has inherited some terrible parts of her mother, even if she doesn't know exactly what those things are. Interestingly, epigenetic changes can be passed down to the next generation, a phenomenon called transgenerational epigenetics. This means that environmental exposures or developmental cues experienced by one generation can influence the characteristics of their offspring. If there were environmental exposures such as toxic gases that could have altered Shauna's genetics out in the wilderness, Callie may have inherited those cellular alterations. Shauna, Van, and Aquila all experienced a toxic gas exposure in the cave, which nearly killed them and caused severe hallucinations. I suspect the gas in the cave is methane, but we don't have to get into the details of all of that right now. However, yes, methane gas exposure can cause cellular alterations, primarily due to its ability to displace oxygen, leading to tissue hypoxia and potentially other physiological changes. While methane itself is generally considered non-toxic in limited quantities, high concentrations can disrupt normal cellular processes and cause harm. High concentrations can displace oxygen in the air, leading to oxygen deficiency in the body's tissues and cells. This hypoxia can disrupt cellular respiration and energy production, potentially causing cellular damage and dysfunction. So, Callie might literally have the wilderness in her on a cellular level due to her mother's traumatic near-death experiences. Remember, mothers and daughters share 51% of their mitochondrial DNA. Callie is truly the child of the wilderness.
Let's go to that new place on Main. Pigeon?
Squab.
Squab?
Squab.
Yeah.
If you've stuck around to this point in the video, thank you all so much for watching. This video was surprisingly difficult for me to make and also turned out a bit meta. Sometimes art really does imitate life. I must have manifested waking narcissistic snakes in my own life, and it caused a lot of distraction while making this video. However, though it took a little longer than expected, I feel stronger on the other side, so thank you guys for bearing with me over the past couple of weeks. I was going through some stuff, and I understand how difficult it can be to experience narcissistic family abuse, so just know that this is a safe space for my viewers who might be going through anything similar to that. I send you out lots of love, and I hope that you can get through this difficult time with grace and comfort. We are Team Callie around here.
That mothers and daughters share mitochondrial DNA and apparently homicidal tendencies.
But those are just my thoughts, so let me know yours in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and for more content like this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you all in the next one.
This is real. This isn't some sympathy marriage or fucked up version of survivor's guilt. Well, shit, I don't know. Maybe it is.